Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Stream Tech Conversations. My name is Anthony Barocas, and today I have the pleasure to speak with Katie Fawkes, who is the Director of Marketing for Ecamm. She tells us how she made the transition from copywriter to on-camera content producer. She also tells us about her workflows, giving you good examples to follow if you're just starting out or if you need to be portable. In fact, she has managed to leverage live production technology and a little bit of AI to streamline the time it takes to make new digital content and digital confetti, as she calls it, for a new 80s movie channel she created called the VHS Club. She's able to deliver finished shows and podcasts to multiple channels in just a few hours a week. We also talk about how mistakes and problems can actually be good things. We'll talk to her in a minute. Welcome to the show, Katie. Thank you very much for giving me your time today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
First let's, find out a little bit how you got started, in this industry, like where you came from, what you started and what you're doing now.
Oh my gosh, well, kicking and screaming a little bit, if I'm being totally honest. I come from a writing background. I'm actually an English literature and ancient history major of all things. And I really wanted to be a published author. That was like my original goal and dream. So I shifted into copywriting and product writing and website writing for websites, and then social media became a thing. So I got into the world of social media marketing and was working a number of jobs in a number of different places there. And then I have really good friends who own a company called Ecamm, and they were growing really rapidly in the live streaming and video production space, but they had no marketing team whatsoever. And so they were initially asking if I could jump on and help kind of put together a marketing plan and take a look at what they were doing. And I just fell in love with the space, but I'd be lying if I said that it was not incredibly scary being on camera. It was certainly something I had never dreamed of doing, never wanted to do. Love being behind the camera, but these days it really feels like home, and I'm having a lot of fun, and it's a really great way to be able to connect with people and build a community and just, spend time in this crazy world that we're in, where we're all kind of isolated and yet always together here in this video space. So it's been a journey. I know that's an overused word, but it's been a journey from start to finish.
And that's really what I want to capture, in these conversations is everybody's journey is different.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of people who are interested in it, but it seems really, really daunting.
It is.
And, as someone who has just sort of leapt into that space and now you're in front of the camera and, for people who aren't necessarily in front, but also for producing,
Sure.
what fears did you have with that? Because you're starting with copywriting, but then the segue to actually working with gear and in front of the camera is a big step. What was that process for you?
Well, so when I ended up joining the team full time, so kind of moving from that contract position into full time, one of the projects that I started with was launching a live show. I mean, we are a live streaming company. We certainly were even more in live streaming than we are today. And so working with like influencers and a number of our customers to do exactly what we're doing right now, right? Having an authentic conversation and, introducing some of our newer customers and people who have been doing it for a really long time. I would say that my biggest fear around that was just the idea of, there's this immediacy and authenticity to live streaming where you have, viewers who are sitting there in the chat and they have the ability to ask questions that you can see in the moment. And so I think more than anything else, and maybe more than even my own vanity, was the idea of, what if I don't know what I'm talking about? I was certainly brand new to video. I didn't know everything about, everything about how the software worked, everything about, the cameras and all the technology that kind of surrounds live streaming. And so I was worried that I would look a little bit like a fraud, or that I would, be embarrassed and fumble over trying to answer someone's question. And as the person who's supposed to be the authority in this space and, out there promoting it, I was just worried that I would I wouldn't look as smart as I wanted to, I guess, to the audience watching.
I think, how did you overcome that? I'm wondering, what did you communicate to the audience? And I know I do it in every live show that I do, but I want to hear, like, how do you communicate where you are in that progress of knowledge to the audience so they understand?
Oh my gosh. I think it was a really conscious decision. I loved the job and I loved the team, and I knew that the job was going to be that I needed to be on camera. And I think, so I had to just do it. So the first few of them, I was like, well, I'm just going to suck it up and I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to try to smile my way through it and laugh my way through it. What made it slightly easier was that I was there with other people who were experts, at Ecamm. They were, customers who had really grown, incredible YouTube channels and online presences. So it was sort of nice that I was there with them, and I was bringing them on to ask for their expertise. So it became really apparent to me that I'm like, oh, I don't need to know everything. In fact, I can be the voice of the customer, and I can ask them these questions and learn from them. And so every live stream that I was doing, and certainly even the ones that I do now, I try to be as open and honest as I can be with everyone watching, that I'm learning right there alongside with them. I have made all of the live streaming mistakes, every humiliating moment, but it just became more and more apparent that everyone else was too, and everyone was really afraid of all of those moments. And so if I could just get over myself and put myself out there in a way that was real and talk through some of these experiences, we would all learn, and it would allow me to build better relationships with my viewers and with my audience and with our Ecamm's fans and followers and customers. So I think it was just an intentional decision that I probably was going to have moments where I was going to look dumb and I was just going to ride it out and learn and take that and make that into a learning opportunity instead of an embarrassing moment.
Yeah, I find the same thing. Like I said, we talked before we started recording that I have done over a year's worth of shows for a company called YOLO Live.
Yeah.
And I made clear, like, in every show that yes, I'm in the industry. Yes, I do things, but I do not know everything. There's no way that one person can know everything.
Yeah.
And, I invited people to ask me questions that I couldn't answer. And I told them, it's like, listen, I'm not going to make up an answer if I don't know something. I'm just going to tell you I don't know, because I know there are things that I don't know. But, and then I also made it clear that, I'm not on the engineering team. So if you ask me like a deep engineering question, it's going to be an I don't know.
Exactly.
So where do you see, like, we went through COVID, and we're doing this remote, we're using a cloud tool called Restream. Yeah. And that became really big during COVID, this cloud production and things like that. And now that we've sort of segued back into in-person live production and things like that. Where do you see the industry today? Where do you see cloud tools? Where do you see technology, and where do you see the industry heading?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right, right? COVID hit and everyone realized how terrible their video quality was, right? We all sat through endless, Zoom and Teams and Google Meet meetings and webinars and calls with family and friends. And we played the game of, like, you're on mute. No, you're on mute. Why is your microphone not working? And so, in that time you saw a huge, push for people to upgrade their tech, regardless of whether or not they were ever going to get into live streaming or to video creation. People needed to be able to connect and, and work their jobs and be spending time with family and friends who they weren't physically with. So you now have this world of people who have all of this awesome gear to varying levels. And they also have, like, decent skill set in it these days. Most people, like, understand what, generally what quality they're comfortable with. They know how to use the tech that they have. Many people have, continued to kind of upgrade and move off of that. So it's a really cool space right now, because I do think you're correct in that we're seeing a blending of all of these mediums come together, right? So it used to be like live streaming, and it was kind of like, oh, that's something that, like, some people did, but not everyone. And now, now you have, like, live streaming, you have podcasting. Podcasting is now moving more into the video space. So you have people using all of this tech and gear to create video content in all different kinds of forms for all different kinds of purposes. So you have, more and more video on social platforms, you have short video, vertical video, you have, widescreen. You have it when you're out in person at events, or if you're out in an office or studio space, or, you do a regular interview show, and then you have this remote, the ability to have remote conversations and to create video remotely. So I think people are still really trying to figure out what their workflow is. How do you do all of this stuff without it feeling completely overwhelming, especially for people who are in small companies or are entrepreneurs or solo creators? How do you do everything that's possible, or figure out what the best things are for your business and your brand? And how do you blend together the in-person with the online? And I think you're correct, and it comes down to thinking through really high-end equipment as you can get, but in the smaller, more portable size. So I think people are starting to think a little bit more minimalistically about what their space is, because now they might want to pack it up and take it with them. I've been doing that a lot myself this week. We were talking before we jumped on. I have this at-home studio, but I also have a bigger studio that in our office, which is 5 minutes from my house. But I travel a ton, right? So for me, I need a small portable camera that still offers great quality. I need small portable lights. I live and breathe by my MacBook, laptop that I'm able to just throw in a backpack, and I can set up a pretty incredible quality production just about anywhere. So, we did our show, the Flow podcast. We have a video podcast. We did it from a poolside in Orlando a couple weeks ago because we were there for a podcasting conference. So, I think people are just thinking about what they have a little bit differently, thinking about their spaces, what they might want to keep set up permanently, whether or not they want to travel a portable option, and thinking about how all those big picture things work together. What kind of content do they want to create? How do they create the most without totally drowning in too many projects happening at once?
Yeah, the gear can definitely be overwhelming, and I will speak as someone with gear acquisition syndrome. And
yep,
because I've been in the industry long enough that I have acquired stuff a long time.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit as the director of marketing and you want to get, obviously you're marketing a product, but in terms of just marketing yourself and getting out there and everything, to someone who wanted to start a YouTube channel, start marketing their own, craft or their own widgets or whatever.
Sure.
What do you see useful today? What is the strategy? Is it vertical? Is it horizontal? Is it little pieces everywhere? Is it long form? Is it short form? Is it trying to do everything all at once?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I have been starting, so I recently, for fun, I laugh because it's now, as much work as everything else, but for fun, I recently started doing, I've been talking for years. I'm a huge movie geek. I grew up in the Blockbuster days. I love myself an 80s and 90s movie. And so I started my video podcast all about 80s and 90s movies, where my best friend and I rewatch or watch for the first time some of these movies, one a week, and we review them. And so I had to think through exactly what you're saying, right? So I'm very used to this space where, it's been over years we've built up, this large marketing presence for Ecamm. But me, myself, I don't have all that big a presence. And so I was trying to think through okay, what is the most efficient way for me to do this show? And, and how do I let people know about it? And how do I create it? For me, the hardest part is the actual long form video content, right? That's the hardest thing to do. And so I approach it, I'm okay, if that's the hardest and that's the biggest thing, and that's the majority of the actual content, then that sits on top. So I need to focus on thinking through that first, right? So if you're a business owner and you're okay, I want to get into video, I want to be able to do this. What is the main content that you want to be able to put out, right? So if it's longer form content, if it's interviews, or if it's a show like what I was trying to do, then you need to think about that sitting at the top. and then figure out a strategy and a workflow that's going to help you create that content as efficiently as possible, and then repurpose that content as efficiently as possible so that you can use shorter clips from that, the transcript of that to turn into like a blog post or a PDF. There's all this kind of, my friend Stephanie is always calling it digital confetti. There's all this digital confetti, right? That you can sprinkle all over the internet based on that one longer form video. But you need to be able to create that initial video really efficiently and effectively. So for me, it's this live to tape concept. So I do all of my long form videos live, even if no one is watching, even if if it's an unlisted live video and there's like no intention for anyone to be watching, fine. But it forces me to get from point A to Z in the actual creation of the video without having to stop and rethink and kind of, correct myself. I'm totally a recovering perfectionist. So for me, that's the easiest. And then, I leverage a really effective workflow that I've thought about. What are the pieces of content that I need? What's the quickest and easiest way for me to get them in the quality and in the format that I need? So in my workflow for the VHS Club podcast, so for my Silly for Fun podcast, I record live on YouTube. We have people that come in and hang out with us. I take that file and then I upload it into my podcast host. And so the audio goes out to, and the video to a couple of the platforms that have video, but that goes out. I don't edit it. I literally, it's a raw kind of uncut. I've intentionally done that. And then I can take that link, my YouTube link, and I can drop it into a tool like Opus, which is a really great AI video clipping tool. And within like 15 minutes, it's given me anywhere upwards of like 10 clips, vertical clips. So it's like reposition my widescreen video into vertical clips. And it's given me a rating even for them. So like, this is an A+ clip. This is what you talked about, like, and broken it down, right? So then I have a bunch of vertical content I can think intentionally about. And then I've also, because I know that sometimes maybe that's like not the best way to promote my show, at the end of recording my episodes, at the end of live streaming it, I'm chatting with my best friend, she jumps off, and for 5 minutes, I change the format of that video over to vertical, which I can do really easily in Ecamm. And I record 3 movie facts about the movie we just reviewed, which are fresh in my mind because we literally just reviewed it. And I know if I stick to under 59 seconds, I can use that on YouTube. So, that's actually a faster and easier way for me to create like a shareable piece of content. And I know exactly the format. So it's really quick and easy for me to do it. So I've thought about the big picture. I've thought about the pieces that I need. I've thought about the format that I need them in. And I've created a system that takes me maybe, including recording, 3 hours a week, right? So I'm one of the hours is recording, and then the other 2 are like picking out, facts and maybe, creating like a couple different graphics that I'm going to use, scheduling the video, those kinds of things, like which I could do literally while I'm watching the movie, like in the background. So I think it's really about thinking through kind of those big picture workflows and figuring out like, maybe doing everything is what you want to do and there's a way to get there. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's, we don't have a blog, for example. I'm not, creating like, transcripts and like, I'm not doing some of the detailed work that I do on the Ecamm side because I don't need it for that particular show. But I know how to, if I changed my mind and wanted to. I know that there's an easy way to do it these days, especially with all the AI tools out there.
And for the what is it called again? The VHS?
The VHS Club.
The VHS Club.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I go on YouTube, I look for the VHS Club.
Yep.
Okay, so on the VHS Club, you record straight to YouTube, which is daring and bold. I
live stream it. I live stream it right to YouTube. We have maybe 5 people that watch live with us, and then each of our episodes is like anywhere between like 23 and 100. But it checks the boxes, right? So like the things that I'm thinking about in that workflow are that YouTube is owned by Google. So it's a huge search engine, and YouTube has been spending the last couple of years forcing their way into the podcast space. So if I want to do a podcast, I'm going to do a video podcast, I'm going to do YouTube first because they are going to take over that space. And then I don't have to worry about the video. I start with YouTube. So everything else is like a checkbox. Because I start with YouTube, I can just drag and drop the video right into my podcast host. It pulls the audio out for me and sends it through to all the other podcast apps. So that's like an afterthought because the video is the hardest part. So forcing myself to start there just makes everything else feel significantly easier because it's all, it's all just sort of it is, I guess, the easier part of it to be able to get all those other pieces of content.
I'm curious though. So you're doing a discussion about a movie while you watch the movie, but the podcast app, is that audio only? And are people listening to the audio of the movie without seeing the movie and hearing you talk about the movie?
Great question. So we watch the movie beforehand and we have like a discussion. So we review it. We do play sometimes the trailer, but for the most part, even if you're listening on the audio side, you can generally you get the feeling, and you know the movie, or maybe you've rewatched it with us leading up to the episode. So yeah, I mean, I think because it's just a conversation similar to what you and I are having here, the audio works, and we're always thinking about the audio only audience. Our video audience is definitely larger than our audio audience, but we do have both. We have people who just, plug us in their ears or in their cars as they're driving around and listen. So we create first for YouTube, we live stream it there, and then that becomes automatically a replay video that gets added into our YouTube podcast. YouTube has like a specific space for podcasts. I grab that video file, which I have automatically saved to my computer with Ecamm, and I take it over into my podcast host, which for this show is Spotify, and I literally drag and drop it in and enter the details of the episode. And Spotify, as a podcast host, sends that audio only file out to all of the different podcast players. So it goes out automatically to Apple and obviously Spotify, and then a ton of other smaller players, Amazon Music, a ton of other smaller players out there. And then anyone can follow it and listen to it. It's literally as easy as dragging and dropping it in. So again, like the hard work is in the setting it up initially, and I guess creating, going live and actually recording those episodes. But from that point on, everything just becomes a system and a way to really quickly and easily get the content into the hands of people in the spaces that they want to consume it. So there's people who are diehard podcast people who are only going to ever listen to a show, right? And so I want to be able to get my content to them. And there's people who are like total video people and want the experience of hanging out in our, what we jokingly call our live studio audience. They want to be there with us. They want to be able to give like feedback. They want to feel like they're part of the show. So I give it to them as well. And there are people who hang out in the replay audience, right?
Do you interact with the audience that's there with you during the live watch?
I do. I try not to overdo it so that it's obnoxious for people who are listening later. And we do always put like a reminder to people that, we're like, we record live every Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, and anyone can come and join our live studio audience. So we review the movie, then we rate it. So a lot of the interaction with the live studio audience comes at the end of the episode, where we like are about to give our rating, and then we ask our audience like what they would rate it, and then we read out their ratings so that anyone listening can say like, oh, okay. Paul thought it was like 5 pirate flags, and they always rate in like crazy things that relate to the movie. And now we have a lot of our audience members who actually, because they know that we talk through like interesting facts about the movie or the making of the movie, they will actually research and bring the facts. So we will read those off online. We'll say like, Dan was, Dan shared these facts from Mallrats, like, so did you know this? Did you know that? Like, great job. But I think it creates like it's a really fun experience for the people that get to hang out with us. It's a really fun experience for us to have people that are spending their time with us. And I think it's also a little FOMO for people who are watching and listening later that are like, oh, like it'd be more fun to like hang, like it's, the show is called We're the VHS Club, right? It's a bit of a club. People get to come and hang out. So all this to say that like it's such a cool time to be in this space, because there's so many different things that you can do. You can do them really easily, you can do them really affordably, and you can have a blast doing it. Like whether you're doing it professionally and you're really trying to grow it for your business or your brand or your own personal brand, or you're doing like I am and you're doing it for fun to spend time with friends and to get to relive some of my youth or a little bit of both. Like maybe it's a mix of both. But as someone that went from being like horrified about the idea of being on camera to now it's really fun to walk into this space and have these conversations, it's amazing to me what's possible and how easy it is. Like I never would have imagined how easy it is to be able to like produce what in many cases feels like television quality productions, in pretty easily. Like I said, it's a couple of hours a week that I'm spending at and probably more than I even need to because it's fun to do. So
I think that's the key thing, fun to do. If somebody wanted to get into this and wanted to start their own channel and, delve into it like you have, it's do something you really love.
Do something you love, yeah. Find a topic that you could talk about for hours, like whatever that is. Like we have a customer, for example, who's an immigration lawyer. And he's like one of the coolest people that I've met. But when the pandemic hit, he was like, oh, there's all these people are talking about I got to get over to Canada, or like all these jokes and conversations that actually were relevant to his business. Right. And he loves what he does. He could talk about this stuff for hours. So he just started a live show where he took people's questions. People had tons of questions, and there was, and maybe they didn't have the money or the means to immediately hire a lawyer to be able to answer those questions because they were still in the consideration phase. But they would spend an hour a week, sometimes more, just jumping onto a live stream with him and being able to ask their questions and engage with him. And you can better believe that when they are looking later for an immigration lawyer or for any kind of lawyer, they're going to him because they trust him. They've spent time with him. He was there and present. But again, it's the same thing for we have customers who are plumbers. We had magicians, musicians, teachers, everyone who gave of themselves and of their time to put themselves out there in front of an audience. It built their confidence, and it also, built an audience for them of people who maybe never would have known who they were, who were able to discover them, through all this. So even though we're somewhat past pandemic phase, it doesn't mean that it's not still possible to be in this space, whatever that means for you, whether it's recording or it's live streaming or it's podcasting or it's a mix of all of them. But I think giving of yourself and talking about a topic that you're passionate about to some level is a really great way to build a marketing program.
And it kind of goes back to what you said very early on, just having that authentic conversation, excuse me, between you and the audience, because that's the rapport that you're making, whether it be whatever the platform might be, whether it be Twitch or YouTube or we had someone, I just spoke with someone yesterday who their platform is direct to Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon, the store, but it is still being direct and providing something that is of use or of interest to the viewer. And there's nothing, the technology is super easy. He just kept holding up his cell phone. He's like, listen, you've got a cell phone. It has a camera. It can record. There's no barrier to technology.
There's no barrier. Nope. And put yourself out there. The moment I got over myself and just started asking questions, it was amazing to me how many people want to help you do this. People who are doing it are passionate about it and excited about it. If it's working for them, so they're happy to answer. There are so many YouTube videos out there talking you through how to use your phone as a webcam. What are the best cameras that you can have in a home studio? What's the best lighting? Where do you put your all of these different questions. But yeah, I think you're right. It's the hardest part is starting or thinking through what you're going to talk about. That's the hardest part. Everything else from that point on is solvable, is answerable. You can get help for, you can test and make improvements to. It's really just thinking about what is that one thing that you have, a strong knowledge in, or you're passionate about, or a mix of both that you could talk about.
I think that really, speaks to people who are interested in doing something, but have felt like they're not qualified. They don't have the expertise to make it happen. The first step is not going to be perfect. The first step never is perfect.
Never.
Whatever you do, don't go to my AIBA channel, look at my early videos. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just go to the Stream Tech channel. Yes. Because and then once you get going, it's like learning to ride a bike almost. Those first time you're on the bike, it's not going to be good, but then you get better at it. And then after a while, like your show, you're pedaling, you've got the process down, and you're able to enjoy the journey after that. You're able to not focus on the process so much, but focus more on the trip you're taking.
Yeah. Honestly, too, one of the coolest parts, and maybe you who are watching or listening are not the person who's ever going to do live streaming, and that's fine. But but I will say about live streaming, one of the most freeing parts about it is that the moments where things go horrifically wrong, and they will, and they do, are the moments that people remember the most, and the moments that people just seem to love. Like, you're almost better off if something goes wrong than if it doesn't. Like, the moments are a kid comes screaming in, or a light falls over, or a cat walks across in front of your camera, or the internet goes out and you look crazy but people can still hear you. It's sort of how you handle yourself in those moments, and it makes it memorable, right? It's a what's it called? It's a pattern interrupt. It kind of surprises people out of what they're watching and the content, and it does become more memorable. Not that you always, obviously want things to go wrong, but I will say the millions of times that things have gone horribly wrong for me have now kind of become some of my favorite moments. I often pull them back up and share them out across my social channel because they're relatable and they're funny and they're ridiculous. I had one time a camera. I was using a DSLR camera. I had it plugged in. I had it plugged into my computer, but I was using the wrong cable, so it wasn't actually charging off my computer. It was only connecting the camera to my computer. And if you are at all a video person, you know that if your camera is connected and you're using it as a webcam, it's obviously taking battery power. And so it died halfway through what I thought was an incredibly important live stream, and my face froze like some terrible thing. It just freezes your face on screen. So it's the most embarrassing possible thing that could happen when you're trying to look professional. And the first time it happened, I was so horrified. I didn't even know what to do. I was just end the stream. And the incredible person I was interviewing talked me through what to do to switch over to my built-in webcam and the other cameras I had, which was great. And now, that even though that was humiliating, that still happened, I think, 2 other times because I was moving too fast or I thought something was plugged in correctly. But when it happened the second and third time, I knew immediately, because of his kindness, exactly how to switch over to a different camera and to laugh my way through it all. And it's those moments that people have been like, oh, Katie, I saw that stream and I felt for you because that's happened to me. Or they'll say oh, I was so worried about something like that happening to me. But because you stayed on and you talked through how to solve it, I now have the confidence to know if that happens to me, how to fix it. And so it just became sort of relatable and a story that actually helped people instead of what it could have been, which was me being I'm never live streaming again. I looked ridiculous. It's not happening again. So I don't know. There's a kind of beauty and a charmingness about when things go wrong.
It humanizes us as people. We have the expertise. We're on the other side of that big first step and everything, but it also shows that things still go wrong.
Yep.
And that it's like why people like watching behind the scenes of motion pictures, because we're all just people. Yeah, you could be, I'm, but at the same time, I'm wearing a pajamas with a bunch of, trackers on me and a helmet with white dots.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You kind of, you're in on the magic. There's something about a produced video that feels like a little bit of a lie. That's not the right word, but a little bit of a lie, right? Because they can do a lot with it. They can make your space look way better. You can make it look however you want it to look. There's something about someone sitting in front of you where anything could go wrong. You know that they're there. They're in the moment with you. They are giving of themselves. They are risking all of the everything that could go wrong. That feels like then you have a connection with them. They're there to answer your question. They're not heavily producing it. They're giving of their time and spending time right in front of you. So there's a magic in live streaming that I think is always been there. And I think more people now know it on the other side of COVID. And it'll be interesting to see over the next 5 years how kind of like the world of recorded and produced blends with the world of live, and what those kinds of like vertical short videos look like in the middle. They're almost like a bridge in between, where you have some that are really well produced and then others that are like really gritty, that are just shot on a phone and that are really real. So yeah, I think it's an exciting time.
Well, Katie, I do appreciate you giving up your time today. I appreciated your insight into making that journey and making that step, and then also like finding out about this new show that you're doing, this new channel, and the process that you've created. Because I think for people who are interested in doing this, that first step, that hurdle, which looks like it's up here, it's actually not as high as you think, and making that step, you're going to be like, oh, I waited this long. That was way easier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And if it does help, so I actually co-host 2 shows, so certainly come and hang out with us if you want to talk old movies. We're there with you. On the Ecamm side, we actually run a show every week. I'm actually recording today in about an hour. Every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Same format as my other show. We're live on YouTube to record our episode. But that show is called The Flow, and it is all entirely about how do I video podcast and how do I make the workflow easier. So if you want to, dive deep into any of these topics, or you have questions specifically about us, you can absolutely join us over there. Or catch past episodes and learn like what is a YouTube podcast, what are the different platforms that are available, what video versus audio, how do I approach it? We answer all of those questions and more on that show every week.
Well, cool. Well, again, thank you very much, and I will look forward to seeing your show. Actually, I'm shooting a show today. My live show is 12 o'clock Central.
There you go.
I may be able to catch a few minutes of yours before I have to dive into mine.
Perfect. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and I will look forward to seeing your show, and I will check out the VHS show as well. As someone who grew up on movies in the 80s, I will.
You're our people.
I am your people. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes another episode of Conversations here on Stream Tech. Again, this show is for people in the streaming industry and for people who are interested in streaming. We have lots of tech videos to help you get started about technology, widgets, and whatnot. Feel free to check them out. Subscribe and like the channel. And of course, if you do find something you like, feel free to share it on your social media to help us grow this channel. My name is Anthony Barocas for Stream Tech. Thanks for watching.